"Pearl, sweetheart, you're in the garage." My mother said it with the same soft smile she used in family photos, the kind that made strangers think she was warm. I stood in the doorway, one foot on the polished dining room floor, the other facing the cold concrete of my parents' garage, holding their anniversary gift against my chest. Inside, candles glowed across white tablecloths. Crystal glasses waited beside folded napkins. Every chair had a name card. Every chair except mine. I looked past my mother and saw Uncle Raymond laughing near the head table, the same uncle who had sued my parents years ago and almost destroyed them financially. "So Raymond gets a seat beside Dad," I said, keeping my voice low, "but I'm outside with the coolers." Mom's smile didn't move. "Don't make this ugly, Pearl. It's just for the Overflow guests." I looked into the garage. One folding chair, one plastic table, bottled water, spare napkins. No guests. No Overflow. Just me. Across the room, Dad saw us. His fork paused halfway to his plate, but he didn't stand. He just looked at Mom, then at the guests, like choosing silence would keep the room peaceful. That was when something inside me went very still. I had driven 2 hours for their 35th wedding anniversary. I had helped with the caterer, sent photos for the slideshow, and spent months restoring the wooden memory box in my hands. It held old letters, family pictures, and recordings from my grandmother that I thought would make them cry in the good way. Then Mom's eyes dropped to the gift. Only for half a second. But I saw it. Not curiosity, not gratitude. Fear. I tightened my grip on the wrapping paper. "You really want me to sit out there?" She leaned closer, her perfume cutting through the smell of roasted chicken and candle wax. "For once, Pearl, don't embarrass this family." The dining room had gone quieter. A few cousins pretended not to listen. Raymond stopped laughing. I lifted the present slightly. "Then you don't need this either." I turned toward the front door. A chair scraped hard behind me. "Pearl." Dad was suddenly running after me, in front of everyone. I reached the porch with my keys already in my hand, the night air cold against my face. I didn't turn around until he called out again, breathless and shaken. "Pearl, wait. What did your mother tell you about that box?" I froze halfway down the driveway. The wrapped box pressed so tightly against my ribs that one corner dug into my coat. Behind me, the anniversary music kept playing. Soft jazz, polite laughter, silverware against plates. The kind of sounds that made everything look normal from the outside. Dad hurried down the porch steps, his dress shoes slipping slightly on the stone path. "Pearl," he said again, quieter this time. "What did she say about the box?" I turned around slowly. "Not are you okay?" I asked. "Not why were you put in the garage, just the box." His face tightened like he had been hit and didn't know where to put the pain. "That's not what I meant." "It's what you asked." He looked back toward the house. Through the front windows, people were shifting in their chairs, pretending not to stare. Mom stood in the doorway with one hand resting on the frame, her smile still fixed in place. Dad lowered his voice. "Your mother told me you weren't bringing anything tonight." I blinked. "What?" "She said you didn't want to contribute, that you thought the anniversary was excessive." His words slowed as he watched my expression change. "She said you only agreed to come after Daniel convinced you not to make a statement." I let out a short laugh, but there was nothing funny in it. "Daniel convinced me?" I pulled my phone from my pocket with shaking fingers. "Dad, I booked the caterer deposit. I sent the photo slideshow. I called Aunt Lydia to confirm the seating count because Mom said she was overwhelmed." Dad stared at me. "No," he said. "Margaret handled all the anniversary communication." "Exactly." I unlocked my phone and opened the messages. There they were, one after another. Mom asking me to keep the memory box a surprise. Mom approving the caterer. Mom telling me to arrive through the side entrance because the front door would be crowded with vendors. Dad took the phone from my hand. His thumb scrolled. The porch light caught the gray at his temples. He looked older than he had looked 10 minutes ago at the head table. "She told me you didn't answer her calls," he said. "She never called." He swallowed. "She said the gift was too sentimental, that you were using it to make the night about Grandma." "She told me not to let anyone see it until after dinner," I said. "She said opening it during the meal would be too emotional." Dad looked down at the wrapped box now, not with impatience, but like it had become heavier without moving. For a second, I thought he finally understood. Not all of it, but enough. Enough to see the shape of what Mom had done. Then he said, "Come back inside. We'll fix the seating. Just don't let this ruin the night." I stepped back. "No. Pearl." "No, Dad. I'm not going back in there to sit at some emergency chair you drag in after everyone already saw where she put me." His jaw worked, but no words came out. "I helped build this night," I said. "I paid for part of it. I came here hopping stupidly that maybe this time I'd just be your daughter, and she put me in the garage like luggage." The front door opened wider. Mom stepped onto the porch. The warm light spilled around her, and behind her I could see guests standing in little clusters, watching from the dining room. "Alan," she said, still sweet enough for an audience, "come inside. Dinner is getting cold." Dad didn't move. Mom's eyes dropped to his hand. "My phone." Then to the gift. The smile stayed, but her voice sharpened underneath it. "She's twisting this like she always does." Dad looked at her. "Margaret, why did you tell me she wasn't bringing anything?" Mom gave a tiny laugh. "This is not the time." "It seems like exactly the time," I said. Her head turned toward me. For the first time that night, she stopped pretending to be gentle. "Pearl, do not start." I held the box tighter. "You already started it when you gave me a garage chair." A murmur moved through the doorway behind her. Mom heard it too. Her eyes flickered, not with shame, but calculation. Then she took one step forward and spoke through her teeth. "Give your father his phone back and stop performing." "It's my phone," I said. Dad didn't look away from her. Why didn't I see any of these messages? Mom's gaze stayed, locked on the wrapped memory box. Not on him. Not on me. On the box. And standing there in the driveway, with the whole anniversary dinner listening from behind the glass, I realized something that made my hands go cold. My mother wasn't afraid I would leave. She was afraid I would bring that gift back inside. Mom stepped fully onto the porch and lifted her voice just enough for the people inside to hear. "Pearl," she said, pressing one hand to her chest, "no one sent you away. You chose to cause drama at your father's anniversary." The sentence landed exactly where she aimed it. Behind her, the doorway filled with faces. Aunt Lydia, Daniel, two cousins from Ohio, Raymond hovering near the dining room like he was deciding whether the show was worth missing dessert. Dad looked from Mom to me. I saw the trap closing. If I stayed outside, she would tell everyone I had stormed off. If I walked away, the garage chair would become another story about how difficult I was. So I walked back inside. Not fast, not crying, not shouting. I walked straight past Mom, still holding the wrapped box, and stopped beside the seating chart on the entry table. The dining room went silent. I pointed to the chart. "Then where is my seat?" No one moved. Mom let out a soft laugh. "Pearl, don't be childish." "Show me my name." My cousin Elise stepped forward first. She had always been the one who noticed awkward things too late and then tried to fix them with napkins or compliments. She leaned over the seating chart, scanned it once, then twice. Her face changed. "Pearl," she said quietly, "you're not on here." A few heads turned toward Mom. Dad came in behind me. "Margaret." Mom waved a hand like she was brushing away smoke. The printer must have cut it off. There were last-minute adjustments. I turned and opened the garage door all the way. The overhead bulb flickered on. There it was for everyone to see. One folding chair beside a plastic table, 3 water bottles, a stack of spare napkins, and the cooler humming against the wall. No extra plates. No other chairs. No overflow guests. Someone near the back muttered, "But Raymond has a seat." Raymond stared down at his wineglass. Mom's face tightened. "That was temporary," she said. "Pearl knows that." "I knew I was told to sit there," I said. "That's what I knew." Daniel pushed through the cluster of relatives. His tie loosened, his expression confused and irritated. "Wait," he said. "Mom told me you asked to sit separately." I turned to him. "What?" He looked at Mom, then back at me. "She said you didn't want to be near everyone, that family dinners overwhelm you." A low murmur moved around the room. Mom snapped, "Daniel, not now." But Daniel kept going, slower now, like the sentence was becoming heavier while he said it. "She also said you refused to help pay for anything because you thought the dinner was a waste of money." I pulled out my phone again. This time, I didn't hand it to Dad. I held it up where Daniel could see the receipt. "Caterer deposit," I said. $2,800 paid by me 6 weeks ago. Daniel stared at the screen. Dad stepped closer. "Pearl paid that." "Nearly half the dinner," I said. His eyes shifted to Mom, and the room shifted with him. For the first time all night, Mom didn't have an answer ready. Then her attention snapped back to the present in my arms. "Fine," she said, reaching for it. "Leave the box here and go if that's what you want." I pulled it away before her fingers touched the ribbon. The movement was small, but everyone saw it. Aunt Lydia narrowed her eyes. "Margaret, why do you care so much about that present?" Mom's hand hung in the air. "Because," she said. No one filled the silence for her. Then her voice cracked sharp enough to cut through the whole room. "Because it doesn't belong in front of guests." Dad went still. Daniel lowered his phone. Raymond stopped pretending to drink. I looked down at the wrapped box, at the ribbon I had tied that morning thinking my parents would open it together and smile at old memories. Then I set it carefully on the dining table. Mom's breath caught. I placed both hands on the paper and started to loosen the ribbon. "No," she said. Dad turned toward her. "Margaret, what is in that box?" I pulled the ribbon free. Mom lunged. Her hand struck the side of the memory box so hard it flew off the table, hit the floor, and cracked open at everyone's feet. The memory box hit the hardwood with a crack that cut through the room louder than any shout. For 1 second, nobody moved. Then the lid split open. Old envelopes slid across the floor, faded photographs scattered under the dining chairs. 2 cassette tapes rolled beneath the table. Folded bank papers fanned out beside Dad's shoes. Mom dropped to her knees, so fast her bracelet clattered against the floor. "I'll get it," she said. But Dad moved faster. "Don't touch anything." His voice was low, but it stopped her hand in midair. Mom looked up at him. "Alan, this is ridiculous." Dad bent down and picked up the closest paper. At first, his face showed nothing. Then his eyes narrowed. The room stayed frozen around us. Guests stood with half-empty wineglasses, forks abandoned on plates, the anniversary candles burning down between untouched slices of roast chicken. Dad turned the paper slightly toward the light. "This has my name on it," he said. Mom stood too quickly. "Old papers, probably nothing." He didn't look at her. "It's a bank notice." My stomach tightened. I stepped closer and saw the date printed near the top. June 2008. The year everything in our house changed. The year Mom started saying my tuition had strained the family. The year she began sighing over every school trip, every textbook, every grocery receipt, like I was a bill they couldn't escape. Dad's thumb pressed into the edge of the paper. "This account was closed," he said slowly. "I was told this account was drained by legal fees." Raymond shifted near the wall. A chair creaked. Mom's eyes flashed toward him, and for the first time, Raymond wouldn't meet her gaze. I knelt beside the broken box, my fingers hovering over the mess. "I found it in Grandma Evelyn's storage unit," I said. After she passed, Aunt Lydia gave me the key. I thought it was just family things. Dad looked at me. I restored the box because it had your old anniversary letters in it, I continued. Photos, tapes. I thought it would mean something tonight. My voice caught on the last word, but I forced it steady. I didn't know these papers were inside. Aunt Lydia stepped forward. Evelyn kept records of everything. Mom snapped. Lydia, stay out of this. Aunt Lydia ignored her and picked up one of the envelopes with Grandma's handwriting across the front. Your mother was worried, she said to Dad. She never said everything, but she worried. Dad opened another folded paper. His breathing changed. What is it? Daniel asked. Dad read it once, then again. A withdrawal slip, he said, from the retirement account. Mom reached for his arm. Alan, please don't do this in front of everyone. He pulled away. How much? Daniel asked. Dad said the number. The room reacted before anyone could stop it. A few people gasped. Someone whispered, that can't be right. Raymond suddenly stood up straighter. I never got that kind of money, he said. Every eye turned toward him. Dad looked at his brother-in-law. What do you mean, you never got it? Raymond's mouth opened, then closed. Mom's voice sliced in. He means this is old and confusing. None of you understand what happened back then. No, Dad said. I'm starting to think I understand exactly why you didn't want this box opened. Daniel pulled out his phone. Mom saw him and pointed at it. Put that away. Daniel looked at Dad instead. Dad nodded once. Record this. I want no one rewriting it later. That sentence changed the room. It was the first time Dad had chosen proof before peace. Daniel tapped the screen and held the phone at his side. Camera angled toward the floor, recording the papers, the broken box, and Mom standing over it like she wanted to sweep history back under the table. Dad opened another envelope. Inside was a handwritten note in Grandma Evelyn's tight cursive. He read silently, and the color drained from his face. What does it say? I asked. He didn't answer at first. Then he read aloud. Margaret moved funds through Raymond after the property case. Alan believes tuition caused the strain. Pearl is being blamed for what she did not spend. The words landed like glass, breaking all over again. I gripped the edge of the dining table. Mom shook her head. That woman hated me. She always did. She wrote things down to make me look bad. Aunt Lydia's voice was quiet. Then why did you try to destroy the box? Mom turned on her. Because this is our anniversary dinner, not a courtroom. Dad bent down and picked up one of the cassette tapes. I recognized Grandma's handwriting on the label. Margaret, account transfer, June 2008. The whole room seemed to pull back from Mom at once. Dad held the tape in his palm. What is this? Mom's lips parted, but nothing came out. I looked at the tape, then at the broken wooden box I had carried in with both hands, thinking it was a gift. It had turned into the one thing Mom couldn't smile her way past. Dad looked around the room. Does anyone have something to play this? For a second, no one spoke. Then Aunt Lydia lifted her hand slowly. There's an old tape player in the study, she said. Your father kept it in the cabinet. Dad started toward the hallway. Mom grabbed his sleeve. Her voice dropped so low I almost didn't hear it. Alan, if you play that, this marriage is over. Dad stopped in the hallway with Mom's hand twisted around his sleeve. For 35 years, he had let her guide the room, where people sat, what people knew, which subjects were safe, which memories stayed buried. But this time, he looked down at her fingers and gently removed them one by one. No, he said. If playing it ends the marriage, then the marriage was already standing on something I didn't know about. Mom's face went pale. Aunt Lydia walked into the study and returned with an old gray tape player, the kind with a cracked plastic handle and yellowed buttons. She set it on the dining table between the anniversary candles and the broken memory box. No one sat down. Not even Raymond. Dad slid the cassette in with careful hands. The button clicked. At first, there was only static. Then Grandma Evelyn's voice filled the dining room. "Margaret," I saw the statement. Mom closed her eyes. On the tape, a younger version of my mother answered, sharp and breathless. "You had no right going through Alan's papers." I had every right to ask why money from his retirement account passed through Raymond after the lawsuit. The room went completely still. Dad's hand pressed flat against the table. The recording crackled, then Mom's younger voice came again. "Raymond was drowning. He would have lost everything. Alan would never have agreed if he knew I was helping him after what happened." Grandma Evelyn said, "So you took it without telling your husband?" "I moved it," Mom snapped on the tape. "Temporarily." "And Pearl?" There was a pause. Then my mother's voice, colder than before. "Pearl's school expenses are believable. Alan already thinks we overspent on her. It's easier if he thinks the strain came from that." My breath caught. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just enough that Daniel turned and looked at me like he was seeing the floor disappear under my feet. The tape kept going. Grandma Evelyn said, "You are letting that child carry your lie." "She'll be fine," Mom's voice answered. "She's always fine." Dad reached forward and stopped the tape. The click sounded final. For a moment, the anniversary dinner looked like a photograph after a fire. Candles still lit, flowers still arranged, plates still full, but nothing in the room was what it had been before. Dad slowly sat down, not at the head of the table, but in the chair beside Mom's empty place setting. He looked at me. His mouth opened once before he found the words. "You were never the reason we struggled." I stood behind one of the dining chairs with both hands wrapped around its back. The wood pressed into my palms. I had waited years for someone to say that sentence, but hearing it there, in the room where I had been told I belonged in the garage, made it almost too heavy to hold. Daniel lowered his phone. "Pearl," he said, his voice rough, "I'm sorry." I looked at him. He swallowed and glanced around at the relatives, who had heard Mom's version for years. "I believed her because it was easier," he said. "She said you didn't help. She said you wanted distance. She said you were always making Dad feel guilty." He looked down at the receipt still glowing on my phone screen. "And you paid for half of this." Mom finally moved. She stepped toward Dad, not me. "Alan, I did it to protect this family." Dad didn't look at her. Raymond shifted toward the hallway. Dad's head snapped up. "Don't leave." Raymond froze. "Did you know the money came through you?" Dad asked. Raymond's mouth opened. His eyes cut to Mom. That was answer enough. Aunt Lydia made a small sound under her breath. One cousin picked up her purse. Another backed away from the table like the room had become too crowded with truth. Mom lifted her chin, trying to gather the authority she had walked in with. "You all have no idea what pressure I was under. Raymond was my brother. Alan was furious after the lawsuit. I had to keep this family together." I finally let go of the chair. "No," I said. "You protected your story. You used me as the cost." Her eyes snapped to mine. For once, I didn't look away. Dad stood. "There won't be a toast," he said. Mom turned toward him. "Alan." "No," his voice shook once, then steadied. "Everyone should go home." The perfect anniversary dinner ended with guests leaving quietly past the open garage door. No one joked. No one asked for cake. The chair in the garage stayed exactly where it was, under the bare bulb, waiting for the daughter my mother had tried to erase from the table. The next week, Dad separated his finances from Mom's. He hired an attorney to review the old transfers and every account that had Raymond's name attached to it. Raymond stopped appearing at family dinners after Dad cut off every form of support. Months later, when the documentation confirmed money had passed through his accounts, he signed a repayment agreement instead of fighting it publicly. Daniel sent me a written apology. Not a text with sad emojis, not a quick, "sorry things got weird." A real apology. He admitted to the family that Mom had lied about me refusing to help, lied about me asking to sit separately, and lied about the reason money had been tight for years. He attached the caterer receipt, a photo of the seating chart without my name, and the transcript of the tape. The family group chat, the one Mom used to control like a courtroom where she was always the judge, became the place where the proof stayed pinned. Mom lost the thing she valued most. Not money. Not even the anniversary. She lost the room. People stopped looking to her for the official version. Aunt Lydia stopped letting her speak over everyone. Cousins who used to send polite holiday messages started calling Dad directly. The story of the 35th anniversary was no longer about flowers, candles, or a long marriage. It was about the garage chair and the box she tried to destroy. Dad asked to see me a few weeks later. I met him at a cafe, not at the house. He looked nervous when he sat down across from me. "I want to rebuild this," he said. "I don't expect you to make it easy." "I'm not hiding apologies for your comfort," I told him. "If the lies were public, the corrections have to be public too." He nodded. "I know." That was the first honest beginning we had. Months later, I hosted a small dinner in my apartment. Nothing grand. Pasta, salad, store-bought cake, and candles that didn't match. Dad arrived early with flowers in his hands. He stood by the door, awkward and careful, like he knew he was entering a place where he no longer had automatic rights. "Where should I sit?" he asked. I smiled and pointed to the dining table. Every chair had a name card. His was beside mine. There was no garage seat, no folding chair beside coolers, no hidden table for the daughter who had helped pay, helped plan, and still been pushed out. On the shelf behind us sat the restored wooden memory box. The lid had been repaired, but the crack still showed when the light hit it. I left it that way. Some things should not be made to look untouched. Pearl kept the box, kept her dignity, and never again accepted a place outside a room she helped build.